Hello, it's Matt O'Leary, and I think the whole music community can be pretty psyched. We finally have another album from Melody Prochet's psychedelic pop, dream pop project, Melody's Echo Chamber. This one's called Bon Voyage. Way back in 2012, we got the self-titled debut album, which was really a collaboration between Melody and Tame Impala's Kevin Parker. And it really did sound a lot more like Inner Speaker or like Lonerism than it did a new and exciting creation from an artist with something significant to say. I did really love Kevin's signature kaleidoscopic production on that debut, and a lot of the hooks were irresistible. But the whole experience did tend to bleed together into this drab consistency like a overmixed batter. But there was a spark in Melody's songwriting, and it's very sophisticated, and just her really mesmerizing, ghostly voice. So I was hoping for something with a little more just distinctive personality, a little more artistic urgency, and that really is this album to a T. But why 6 years later? That's really the big question, right? Is just why so long between first and second? Melody actually did put out the song Shirim, which is on this album. She put that out in 2014 as the promotional single to the lead up to what she was hoping would be her sophomore record, but then for some reason discarded most of that material. Then in 2017, so last year, she got in an unspecified accident and she had a brain aneurysm and some broken vertebrae. So let's all just breathe a sigh of relief. She finally got this thing out to the world. She persisted, she beat it, and thank God for that. Bon Voyage is actually under 40 minutes, so it's a pretty short album, but it's just so densely packed with exciting ideas and juicy tidbits that it sounds like the manifestation of the brain rewiring itself. It's like her brain's reorganizing all these neural connections out of the just flood of sensory information she's been exposed to over the years. Opener Cross My Heart really prepares us for the almost attention deficit nature of this whole album. Like, nothing sticks around too long, and if it does, and a section does repeat itself, which happens pretty rarely, then it only does so with major rearrangements. Take the opening verse of this thing where she sings, "This is a promise to my heart, I can't keep falling from so high." It's really one of Melody's most revealing lines, and one that really speaks to just the frustration of all the delays from the past 6 years. And like I said, nothing really sticks around too long. There's not much repetition, which you'd expect from a psychedelic album, but when the verse progression finally does come back 3 minutes into the song for the second time, the drums are completely gone and it's just a shaker instead. The electric bass is replaced by a stand-up bass, and the vocals by this jazzy flute solo. It's really these constant reworkings, these constant instrumental change-ups that really amaze me about this album. There's so much detail, and I'm only really beginning to understand the nuance behind this thing. This song, Cross My Heart, is so good. I love that Jimmy Page acoustic guitar intro riff and those funky Stratocaster tones, and all the various organic and synthetic drum sounds used. Desert Horse is really the centerpiece and another shapeshifter of a track, and really a microcosm for the album. I probably listened to this 7, 8 times and still don't really have a good grip on the structure of the song. But in all its frenzied transformations, it really does a good job of capturing the emotions of the lyric about, running away from a messy situation or a messy relationship that really was all your fault to begin with. And thinking you'll be better off alone, but eventually falling and sinking in the quicksand, which is the last line that she sings in French here. It's like a frightened horse that naively runs away from the security of home and into the barren desert with no support and no sustentation. There's some goofy auto-tune on this thing, which sounds like Sufjan's Age of Odds record. The sharp guitar tones and just the meekness of Melody's voice really remind me a lot of something from the Deerhoof playbook. And let's just talk about that insane bass line. And if you're familiar with modern psych rock bands, you'll notice this sounds a lot less like Tame Impala and a lot more like probably my favorite band in this genre, Dungan. And that makes sense because Melody actually moved to Sweden, the homeland of Dungan, and away from her native France for the writing or recording of this album, and collaborated with members of the band like Gustav Estes and Reina Fiska and another Swede named Fredrik Swan from The Amazing, which is another Swedish band that Reina Fiska is actually a part of. And compared to Tame Impala, Dungan has a lot more of a jazz and a folk influenced psychedelic sound. And you can really hear that on tracks like Quand de l'Alarmes. It translates to When Tears of an Angel Make Dancing Snow. The swirling ambient guitars in that song are so signature Dungan, and so are those really drawn out long tom fills. Or on Var du Vart, which is a short folk tune which is actually written by Dungan frontman Gustav Estes. He sings in unison with Melody on this song. It's such a refreshingly minimal and relaxing little transition track between the front and back halves of the record. For these guys to be part of this record is just a really good surprise. Like, their atmospheric and complex sound at times really does complement and bring a lot to Melody's songs. But what's different about this one is they don't dominate the entire sound. Like, it still feels primarily like Melody's statement, unlike that debut. Melody still has that very whispery vocal, and it really doesn't change a whole lot throughout the entire thing. There are some times when I feel like, you know, in the song Breathe In, Breathe Out, for instance, I just wish it had a little more oomph, a little more grit. But I do really like that innocent and very ingenue sound. She's really at her best when the music's especially creepy or especially sinister, like those heavily Eastern influenced sections on Visions of Someone Special. It's refreshing. I feel like after a pretty samey debut, a pretty one-dimensional album on the whole, Bon Voyage just shows us everything this lady's got in her arsenal. This is a much more disturbing and much more unsettling album that just constantly has its toe dipped into chaos. But at every turn, it still just delivers that pinch of pop magic. She's obviously got a ton of connections over there across the pond, and I really do think these are some of the most exciting sounds of 2018, especially in a psych rock genre that's been losing some steam this year. So it's a solid 8 out of 10 for me, and really a great venture into some experimental territory for Melody, and a triumph given how much she's been through with this injury. Let me know what you think of this album, and if you haven't heard Melody or Dungan before, then just go check it out. As always, thank you so much for watching.